microphone. I really appreciate that. It's a great opportunity. I'm so thrilled. I'm a lifelong Democrat. I was one of those Democrats who thought that just casting my vote, getting my little sticker, and maybe putting my candidate's bumper sticker on my car was fulfilling my civic duty and should be all it takes to ensure democracy was alive and well. I was busy living my own life and raising a family, wasn't interested in politics because after all, how do politics really affect me, right?
Yeah.
Seems I had a lot to learn. Fast forward to the 2016 presidential election. I'm sure I don't have to go into any gory details there. That's when I learned that just voting isn't enough. Filled with panic and anger, I marched. With my husband's support and my children by my side, I marched for women's rights. I marched against violence, gun violence. And I cannot believe that I have to say that I marched against separating families and putting men, women, and children in cages at our southern border. But it wasn't enough. I called and sent emails to my elected officials. I wrote letters to the editors of countless newspapers. It still wasn't enough. So I got serious. I started volunteering my time as a delegate from my precinct. I started attending the monthly Cedar County Democrats meetings and getting on board with the local campaign by driving canvassers and knocking doors. I was mildly terrified. How was a 51-year-old political ignorant going to stand on a stranger's doorstep and convince them to get out and vote? I wasn't well-versed in policy or statistics, and people were tired. They were mentally exhausted from, everything. But I did it, and I still found time for a decent work-life balance. And was it hard work? Sure. Was it worth it? Absolutely. And if I can do it, so can you. And if we all do it, it might just be enough. We're facing many a crisis in this country, and however that situation in DC plays out over the next 18 months, we have to be ready to affect the change we want to see. We need to start right here in Tipton, in Cedar County, in Iowa. Change happens when we get involved with the school board or city council. It happens when we give our time to the community, the food pantry, the animal shelter, school supply drives. It happens when we put down our phones. Wait. My hands are cold and I can't get the paint over. It happens when we put down our phones. Look at each other in the eye and talk to each other. Work things out. Be civil to one another. Help one another. That's where the change is. Until we do this, even electing the right people won't be enough. It's going to take the effort of every one of us to turn this ship around, and we need the right person leading that charge. The person I am about to introduce began his political career nearly 15 years ago when he served 2 terms in the city council in El Paso, Texas. He succeeded a 16-year incumbent to become a member of Congress representing his great state. While in D.C., he helped to enact laws to improve and protect the health care rights of veterans, provide urgently needed mental health resources for active service members. He fiercely advocated for countless immigrants, men, women, and children being held in confinement facilities at the southern border. In 2017, the momentum of his senatorial campaign realized a 500% increase in young voters in a state that had previously been ranked last. Yeah. Let's get those young voters out. Let's get them out. He consistently fights hard for a cleaner environment, looking to reverse global warming and embrace new technology to help us preserve our planet for future generations. He is fighting hard for affordable universal health care to include more affordable prescription drug prices, lower premiums, a greater availability of mental health services, and the opportunity and access he is fighting hard for every woman in this country to make her own choices about her own body. He is fighting hard for safer and humane immigration policies that will protect the dreamers, provide immigrants a reasonable and clear path to citizenship, and end the separation of families as they enter our great country. And he's doing this all without a dime of Super PAC money. I encourage you to go to his website. There is an enormous amount of information on there. Read more about his vision for our country and our future. But for now, get in. We're going to the White House. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to introduce to you presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke.
Buenos dias. Good to see you all. Can you hear me without the microphone? Yes. Okay, maybe mejor. Such an honor to be here with you today, to be in Tipton. A beautiful day to be a tiger. Thank you for that. Sarah, that was amazing what you just said, and is one of the best explanations of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and what it will take. It's all of us standing up to be counted. It is not going to be enough to make a donation to a candidate, to register to vote, to go to the polls. It's going to be knocking on doors, making phone calls, bringing other people into our democracy so that everybody counts and everyone is reflected in what we're doing going forward. And I remember the exact same feeling that you just described of who am I to be knocking on someone's door in that first city council race in 2005, knocking on someone's door, introducing myself, giving them my pitch, and then they respond back and they say, that's great what you just said, Beto, but we live in the Wrestler Canyon neighborhood, and this canyon's about to be developed, and we're going to lose it forever, so I want to make sure that this is your priority. And I said, yes, ma'am, I got it, I'm going to remember that. Knock on the second door, give my pitch, and they say, you know what, Beto, nice try, but Wrestler Canyon is what's really important to us, and so I want you to keep that top of mind. Third door, ma'am, my name is Beto O'Rourke, and I'm here to save Wrestler Canyon. And that's how we learn from those that we seek to serve and represent. Those voters, those fellow citizens, our fellow Americans, they'll tell us what their priorities are and what the solutions are to our challenges. And we have the chance to invite them in, bring them in to this democracy to make sure that they're part of the solution as well. I look around the room and I see that here this morning. Folks who are here not for a candidate, not for a political party, but they're here for our country at this deciding and defining moment of truth for America. I had a chance to see former Representative Nate Willems as I walked in the door, someone who distinguished himself in Iowa in his support for public school educators and the labor movement in this state to make sure that everyone is represented and heard in our economy and in our classrooms. I see Rob Hogue, who's been an absolute leader as a state senator on environmental issues. Rob and I had a chance to talk last week, and we promised each other we were going to exchange books today. So I brought my book, and it looks like you brought your book. And what was interesting is we were talking about climate in the conversation, and those of you who do not know Senator Hogue, not strident, not grandstanding, not trying to mandate the solutions. His question was, how do we bring everyone into the solution? How do we bring this country together? It's hard to think of a greater challenge that we face, and I think intuitively he understands, and certainly through his career in public life has demonstrated that you cannot force this, you've got to bring people in, and that's the only way it's going to happen. So for taking some time out of your morning to come in to your democracy, and to listen to me, and more importantly, to ask questions of me, to offer your suggestions and solutions, I just want to tell you, I'm absolutely grateful. And I'm a little excited right now beyond Sarah's introduction and seeing all of you. It's the last week of school in El Paso, Texas, where my 3 kids are in 6th and 5th and 2nd grade. And our 2nd grader, Henry, is participating in field day at Mesita Elementary, this world-class public school. And Amy just sent me the video. He's the anchor man in the relay. We pulled over to a rest stop. I wasn't watching the video, I was driving. We pulled over to a rest stop, parked, and watched the video of Henry coming around the bend and crossing that finish line. And for the parents in the room, you know that your heart just explodes out of your chest when you see something like that. So excited for Henry and for the O'Rourke family on field day. And also a constant reminder when I'm home, and I know you all feel the same way about your kids, when we think about what we're doing right now, it is about them and the generations that are going to follow us, because we have the greatest set of challenges this country has ever faced in our history. And we're here right now to be able to meet them. We've got an economy that has left far too many behind. Healthcare out of reach and unaffordable for tens of millions of our fellow Americans. And on climate, this is the existential challenge, not just of our time, but for all of human history. And while this is happening, we've got this guy in the White House who seeks to further divide an already polarized country, seeks to undermine an already badly damaged democracy. How do we meet that? My entire life's work has been about bringing people together, about repairing this democracy and ensuring that it works for each and every single one of us, regardless of the differences. More than 20 years ago, when I moved back to my hometown, El Paso in Texas, with some good friends, we started a small business, creating high-wage, high-skill, high-tech jobs for our fellow El Pasoans in one of the poorest urban counties in the United States of America. That was only made possible by the team that we were able to assemble. Serving on the El Paso City Council, not as a Democrat nor as a Republican, it was a nonpartisan elected position. I worked with my constituents, in fact, held a town hall meeting just like this every single week for 6 years. And those constituents and their tough questions and the constant reminder of who it is that I served and to whom I'm accountable, it helped us to pass a balanced budget every single year and to take on the tough challenges and fights and to take them on together. In the United States House of Representatives, I served for 3 terms, and every single day for every single term, I was in the minority. So the only way to do anything of any significance was to find that common ground and the common cause, to pursue the common good with Democrats and, importantly, Republicans alike. That's how we were able to expand mental health care access for returning veterans. That's how we were able to protect public lands. You know, following that lead from Wrestler Canyon and City Council, 7,000 acres of Chihuahuan desert wilderness, and we did that with Republican leadership, finding the way to ensure that this was in everyone's common interest. And then last year in Texas, perhaps with the help of some of you here in this room, I led the largest grassroots campaign in our state's history. Without taking a dime from a single political action committee, we helped, all human beings, no PACs, no corporations, no special interests. We helped to lead a state that had been 50th, dead last in voter turnout, to one that is a contender in our national politics today. And we did that by bringing everyone in. I literally traveled to each of the 254 counties of Texas. No matter how big or blue, no matter how small or rural or red, we showed up everywhere, included everyone, wrote nobody off, and took no one for granted. And at the end of the day, we decided before we were anything else, we are Americans first. We need to bring this country together. We need someone who can make this democracy work again. It's the only way that we're going to defeat Donald Trump in November of 2020, and it's the only way we'll bring this country together to fulfill our promise in January of 2021. That's the kind of leadership that I've shown throughout my life, and that's why I'm running to serve you as the next President of the United States of America. I think I'm calling on you first. I was told by Sarah.
A couple of claims to fame. I have a cousin whose name is Beto. Second,
Is he a Roberto, Alberto?
Alberto. And then my mom was from Texas.
Right on. Where in Texas?
Corpus Christi.
Okay.
Actually, Gregory. And then I lived in El Paso for just the summer.
Wow.
Yeah. Every time that I hear Mayor Pete speak, out of his mouth comes gravitas. Do you have gravitas?
That's going to be a question for you to answer after you have a chance to meet me and to hear me. I wanted to lay out precisely why I'm running this campaign, what I hope sets me apart in an extraordinary field of candidates that includes Mayor Pete and 23 or 24 other amazing Americans who bring their life experience and expertise and background to bear on the challenges of this country. I hope to be able to demonstrate by being here with you and listening to you and being accountable to you right now that I want you in this, not just as a part of this campaign, but a part of a successful presidential administration so that we meet each and every single one of these challenges. So if you will, listen to how this town hall proceeds today, and then if you will, tell me how I did at the end of it. We'd love to hear your judgment on this, okay? Thank you for asking the question.
Next question.
Yep.
Hi, thanks for coming to Iowa again. This is actually my third visit with you, so it's great you're spending so much time in Iowa, and actually been to both my kids' colleges already. My son's up at Wartburg,
Right.
just there, and then my daughter's at UNC Chapel Hill. And it's actually my two kids that inspire why I'm here today, and it has to do with gun control. And you may have heard when you were up by Wartburg about on Sunday, April 28th, how the former UNI softball player was just killed driving home with her boyfriend in the middle of the night. And it's a road between Waterloo and Cedar Falls. My son drives all the time. And so I contacted him the next day and I said, oh my gosh, did you hear this? Please be careful when you're driving. He said, yeah, Mom, I will. I actually knew Michaela, who got killed. So that was really the first time our family had an intimate experience like that with Bethany. Then 2 days later, on Tuesday, the 30th of April in Charlotte, there was the campus shooting where 2 students were killed, and as you know, several were severely injured. Well, my daughter's in Chapel Hill, but all the news media initially said UNC, North Carolina, there's been a shooting. So of course, we're frantic. My husband and I are trying to get a hold of her. All of our friends and family are calling. Thankfully, she wasn't on that campus, but it could have been. It was just 2 hours away. So that's when it really hit me that in my family, in just 2 days, both my children were either directly or indirectly affected by gun violence in this country. So what I did the very next day on May 1st, I went and joined the Johnson County Moms Demand Action. And it's a great way for me. It's a good way for me personally to feel I can do something about this crisis. And actually a very positive benefit, I just had a nice discussion with an Army veteran here who carries a gun, and we had a great discussion about let's work together. Our group wants to defend the Second Amendment, and there's a lot of common ways we can do it. So let's get together and do that. So I read your op-ed this weekend in the Houston Chronicle, and you obviously talked about gun control and your 4 human solutions to that. And maybe I'll read it since I don't know if everyone's heard it, and I suppose you might talk about it. But
I can give you a quick summary of
Yeah.
it so that you don't have to do that if you want.
Please do.
Yeah, but I appreciate you reading that, and even more, I appreciate you living up to what Sarah just laid out for us, which is what it's going to take for us to be able to meet the challenge of this moment. It is not enough to vote, as important as that is. The fact that you're getting engaged and becoming an advocate, joining Moms Demand Action, following the lead of others who've done that before us. We just had a chapter open in El Paso, Texas, and it made me so proud. And I think it was on the same day that the House of Representatives passed universal background checks. And though we want to give credit to the extraordinary reps like Cindy Axney and Dave Loebsack and others who made this important decision, it was really because they felt the pressure from people like you who forced this conversation into the open. So I'm grateful to you for that. I'm also grateful that you made it so personal about your children and what they have experienced. And this story about Michaela, or knowing about Riley Howell at UNC Charlotte, who ran to the gunfire, sacrificed his life so he could save the lives of others. Kendrick Castillo, kid is in high school and ran towards the shooter, and in the process saved the lives of those fellow students at that high school just outside of Denver. We lose more than 30,000 of our fellow Americans to gun violence every single year. And we're meeting kids in middle school. Met a beautiful young woman named Milan at middle school in Newton, who said, 14 years old, says, I'm sick of going to school wondering whether or not I'm going to come home at the end of the day. Henry, that kid that I'm so proud of, who with his team just won that relay, active shooter drill is what he's telling me that he did at school on the day that he came home last year. This is absolutely wrong, and we either accept it as we have, as our fate, as our lot, or we change it as you are. Universal background checks in those states that have adopted them have cut gun violence nearly in half, saving lives in the process. Red flag laws, where we determine if someone's going to be a danger to themselves or someone else in your life or in my life, we stop them before it is too late. We make sure that we no longer sell weapons of war into our communities, where they end up in the schools. You mentioned the very productive civil conversation that you just had with the veteran. I'll tell you, I was in Wichita Falls back in Texas, and a Vietnam-era veteran approached me at the end of our town hall, and this was just after the horrific shooting at Marjorie Stone and Douglas in Florida. And he said, that young man who killed those students was better armed in that high school against innocent kids than I was in the jungles of Vietnam. So I love that you prefaced what you said about respect for the Second Amendment, respect for gun owners to whom we should listen. Because when we do, they tell us that those solutions that I just described make common sense, are popular across party lines, and will save lives in the process. So if I listen to you, instead of the NRA, or worry about their PACs, or the gun lobby, or the effect on our polling, or even the next election, there's no stopping what we're going to be able to do and the number of lives that we're going to be able to save. So you have my commitment to listen to you and other people who want to make sure that we do the right thing. And thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Here's our next question.
Hola Beto.
Hola.
Como inmigrante mexicano, y he tenido aquí arriba de 54 años en este país, yo como residente de Cedar County, en los últimos 48 años, te doy la bienvenida
Gracias.
a este el condado más bonito del estado de Iowa.
Sí. Gracias. ¿Y su nombre, señor?
Oh, perdón, José Carrillo.
Ok. Señor Carrillo, gracias para el bienvenido y para estar aquí con nosotros esta mañana. Es un honor correr en esta campaña con usted y con la gente que están aquí trabajando juntos en las soluciones de los retos que tenemos del cambio climático, de la economía, de cuidado de salud. Y sabemos, conocemos que la última reto es de la democracia de este país y la necesidad de que cada persona pueda participar y podemos contar en cada voz y en cada voto. Y por eso yo quiero dar las gracias a usted y a su familia y en esta comunidad tan bonito. Gracias.
Mi pregunta, tengo una pregunta.
Sí, por favor.
Cuando yo emigré, yo no necesité ningún mérito. Ahora se necesitan méritos para poder ingresar a los Estados Unidos. Mi único mérito fue que yo quería trabajar duro
Sí,
para ayudar a mi familia.
gracias.
Is there any kind of translation?
I will translate. Yeah, you got it. You got it, folks. No problem.
I can translate it.
Yes. So Jose, first of all, welcoming me to the community, saying Cedar County is the most beautiful county in the state of Iowa, and talking about proposed changes to our immigration laws that would focus on, or maybe exclusively on merit, instead of family reunification, or being able to work some of the jobs here in this community or across Iowa or across this country that no one born in this state or in this country for whatever reason is willing to work right now. And so, Jose, I agree with you that we need to make sure that we value what we have right now, that those who've chosen to come to this country, your family and mine, although mine may have been, a few decades before yours, the Irish fleeing famine that consumed more than 1 million lives on that one island, coming to the one place that would take them in, and then doing everything they could to get ahead for themselves and for their kids, but also to contribute to our shared success and our greatness. That's exactly what immigrants and asylum seekers who are arriving in this country today are trying to do and will do if we give them the chance. So yes, let's change our immigration laws, but let's ensure that those changes reflect our values and our learned and shared history. Let's make sure that dreamers, there's more than 1 million in the United States of America, are forever freed from any fear of deportation back to a country they do not know by making them U.S. citizens. And let's make sure that we lift those visa caps so that if you do want to reunite with your family, if you do want to work a job here in this community or in Storm Lake, where we met immigrants who are following the meatpacking jobs, or in any part of this country where we know that your presence and your work will be a net contribution and benefit to the rest of us, let's make sure that you don't have to wait in a line that is 20 or 25 years long. And then lastly, and most importantly perhaps, because Sarah brought this up again at the beginning, those who have traveled 2,000 miles from the deadliest countries on the face of the planet today with their little kids, 3 years or 3 months in tow, doing what any of us would do if faced with the same set of conditions and choices. Let's make sure that we do not greet them with a wall or with a cage for their kids or deportation for their moms. Let's ensure that those families who have been separated are reunited at once, and that we follow our asylum laws and the moral mandate to make sure that we do the right thing by and for one another. Thank you for asking the question.
This is a chance to give you gravitas.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you for going to the southern border. Mayor Pete hasn't made it down there yet. Just let me give you a little background in Iowa. Friday before the election, I went to Cedar Rapids to hear the president-to-be Trump. And it was the day that Kanye had released the emails. And he was trying to get the crowd to chant, "Lock her up, lock her up." 1,500, mostly men, substantial number of women, chanted back, "Kill her, kill her." I am living in an America that perhaps seems more dangerous. It's not that I don't talk to my neighbors, but I have neighbors who want to kill me. I have neighbors who want to shut me up, who want to beat me up. I do not have the privilege of looking at America as just that, well, we haven't had a good conversation yet. And it's a worldwide phenomenon, so I'd like to ask you to comment on what Madeleine Albright calls the fascism, international fascism, whether you look at Italy or Hungary or New Zealand or Australia, right? Authoritarian strongmen. We may just have a narcissistic asshole as our president. It might be more dangerous, however, because he is tolerating, we now have 5 dead children from that southern border detained. So I'd like you to talk about foreign policy principles, right?
Yeah.
Your generation is facing a different world than my generation did, right? And I want to pass the torch to your generation. But I'm not just interested in passing a torch if it's just going to be nice talk. Okay? What are you willing to stand up for and become a martyr for? And ask us to be martyrs for?
Well said. I think Secretary Albright's description, your comments are right on point. Remember that this president, as a candidate, promised that he would ban all Muslims from the shores of a country that is comprised of people from the planet over, from every tradition of faith, every walk of life. When, in modern history, have we heard about a Western democracy seeking to ban all people of one religion because they are somehow defective or dangerous to the rest of us? On the day, as president, that he signed an executive order seeking to ban Muslim travel to the United States, the mosque in Victoria, Texas, in my home state, was torched and burned to the ground. Hate crimes in this country are up each of the last 3 years. A president who describes Nazis and Klansmen and white supremacists as very fine people, A president who describes Mexican immigrants as rapists and criminals, though we know they commit crimes at a far lower rate than those who are born in this country. Asylum seekers, he's called them animals and an infestation. An infestation is how we would describe termites or cockroaches or something less than human that we want to kill. It is that kind of language that doesn't just offend our ears and our sensibilities and the traditions of this country. It causes policies and actions that will forever define this country going forward. You do not get kids in cages until you've made it permissible for those who place them in cages by describing them as something less than the human beings we know them to be. And as the world wrestles with this question that was just posed to us, is the future a democratic one or an authoritarian one? Our president has signaled that he has chosen the latter. His friends on the world stage, first and foremost, Vladimir Putin, whose involvement he welcomed into the 2016 elections. And then after the Mueller report is released, one of the first phone calls he makes is to Vladimir Putin, with whom he spends an hour on the phone, and to whom he describes this Mueller report as a hoax, sending a green light to that country and its leader to further involve themselves in the sanctity of our democracy and the ballot box. But it's not just Putin, it's Duterte in the Philippines, al-Sisi in Egypt, Erdogan in Turkey, MBS in Saudi Arabia, with the blood on his hands of a journalist who lived in the United States, able to kill Khashoggi with absolute impunity, and then bomb Yemen into the last century with no regard for the human life, the innocent civilians who are lost in the process. And this president has aided and abetted every single one of them at the same time that he has turned his back on our fellow Western democracies, on our trading partners and our friendships that in so many cases were forged in sacrifice going back to the greatest generation. This is going to be our moment of truth on the world stage. And absolutely, Mr. President, who speaks with pride and doesn't just tolerate or respect our differences, but absolutely embraces them as fundamental to the strength of this country, stands up for a democracy that has been badly weakened, not just by this president, although he's done more than his fair share, but the gerrymandering, the PACs, the money, the influence, the lack of voting rights for so many of our fellow Americans right now. This democracy must once again be the example for the rest of the world. And then in our foreign policy, we must lead with our values, embrace our friends, and make sure that when the world is looking at us, that we send the signal that free, open democracies are what we support, what we want to be here at home, and the way that we will lead going forward in the future. Thank you for asking the question.
So it's undeniable what you did in Texas. Inspired a lot of people, mobilized a lot of people. But former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid came out last week admitting that he asked you to run for Senate in 2020 in Texas against John Cornyn, who's a far less popular senator in Texas, especially with what the Republican-controlled Senate has been doing these past couple of years, and given your current poll numbers. And you, like you mentioned, the 24 other Democratic candidates running. Why not run for Senate and make a change in the Senate versus running for president?
So first of all, there are some extraordinary candidates in Texas who are running for that position, in whom I have tremendous faith, including MJ Hagar, who is a Army veteran. She's an absolute hero and is a tenacious campaigner. And I think she and some of the other candidates have every chance of defeating John Cornyn and truly representing and reflecting Texas, our home state in the United States Senate. Second, as I made the case at the outset, what's required right now is not just a person, nor a political party, but a movement of all of us. And it cannot just be Democrats, it cannot just be Democrats and independents, it's gotta be Democrats and independents and Republicans. And the movement that we helped to lead in Texas was comprised of that coalition. The challenges that we face, like climate, or healthcare, or this economy, or public education, or student loan debt, will require all of us being able to come together and ensuring that this democracy works. And my life's work has been all about doing that. So in this position, of significance. In this position, it gives us an opportunity to lead this country and bring a very divided nation together. I think that I have found my highest and best calling. I'm going to do everything I can during this campaign to demonstrate that, but rest assured I will also do everything I can, should I not be the nominee, to support whoever she or he is, not only to defeat Donald Trump, but to make sure that this country is up to each and every single one of our challenges in 2021. So thank you for asking.
To your right.
Hi, my name is Deb Vandergast, and I'm owner and director of Tipton Adaptive Daycare. Majority of the children we serve are from low-income families or have special needs or just generally at risk. And I'm watching these families really struggle. And one of their struggles is that they can't afford childcare. And for the families who do get childcare assistance, we're way underfunded. The reality is that I cannot pay my staff a living wage, and I'm ashamed of it. But the reality is also, I can't even pay myself a living wage. And if we raise the minimum wage, which I strongly support, I can't stay open without assistance to help pay a living wage for my staff. I'm not making a profit off of this. And nationwide, we have a problem with a shortage of childcare, and families depend on this to work. Our businesses depend on their employees being able to work. And in Iowa, I don't know the national statistic, we have lost 43% of our childcare providers in the last 5 years. So it's getting worse.
Yeah.
My question is, do you have a plan to address the childcare crisis?
Thank you for being here and for asking the question, and thank you for what you do. Yes, let's start by making sure that the federal government is doing everything possible to make sure that childcare is affordable for everyone. So let's double the size of the block grants that we send to the states that allows lower income families to be able to afford the services that you provide. Let's ensure that the tax code reflects this priority of being able to afford childcare by helping parents to afford the services that you provide. Let's ensure that you, as a small business owner, can take larger deductions on your tax returns so that you can put more of that money into your employees and pay them the living wage that you know that they need to be able to survive. One of the perverse ironies, present company excluded, is that many employees at child care facilities cannot afford child care themselves. So that living wage at $15 an hour as the floor is absolutely imperative. But we need to make sure that we help you as a small business owner in the assistance that we provide on your tax returns to take a much larger deduction so that you have the resources necessary to do that. And then beyond private and nonprofit childcare, we need to expand what we do in our public schools. So universally now in the United States, education starts at 4 or 5 years old in kindergarten. Let's universally make it 3 or 4 years old in pre-K. It's a significant investment for us to make as a country, but what we've seen is that for every dollar we invest in pre-K, over the course of that child's life, we get $9 back out in their return to the economy. So making these wise investments, ensuring the tax code reflects the importance of the work that you do, affords us the resources necessary to invest in people and their children and the success of this country.
Can I
Thank you.
add one thing to
Yes,
that?
please.
One thing to be aware that we're already being hurt by the fact of universal pre-K. We lose money on infants because of staffing ratios. The only way we can stay open is by having preschoolers. So now we've already lost 4-year-olds, we lose the 3-year-olds. We're gonna have to look at how do we keep the daycares open for the 1 and 2-year-olds and the babies. Because, yeah, we can't stay open on the staffing ratios. And we don't wanna put 10 babies with 1 caregiver.
Right.
So that's one of the things we have to look at is, does the solution cause more problems?
What I'd like to do is Cynthia, if you'd help me do this, stay in touch with you to make sure that I understand how that can work, because I'm convinced that investment in universal pre-K is necessary, but I'm also convinced that if that puts you at a disadvantage for taking care of younger kids, there's got to be some way to meet that challenge by making sure that that is profitable for you and that your employees are able to earn enough to be able to do that work. So if you'd work with us, I'd love to follow your guidance on this. You understand it better than I do. Yeah, thank you.
More specific foreign policy question. If you're elected to be president, you'll undoubtedly still be in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear how your administration would orchestrate the withdrawal.
Yep. A good question for those who didn't hear it. We're in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. How would we, in the questioner's words, orchestrate a withdrawal? And if I could add a little bit of context, 28 years ago, a senior in high school, George H.W. Bush announced U.S. military involvement in Kuwait and then in Iraq. So our presence there has been my entire adult life through 6 successive following administrations with no definition of victory, no end in sight, no commonly understood strategy. 18th year in Afghanistan. We're also in Syria, but we are in Libya, we are in Somalia, with the Saudis, we are in Yemen as well right now. Have added nearly $6 trillion to the national debt. It's part of the deficit spending that totals $1 trillion just this year. The thousands of lives lost from communities like this one, and the tens of thousands of lives taken in the name of this country. I think war should be the absolute last resort for our foreign policy. Unfortunately, for most of my life, it has been the way that we have led our foreign policy. Let's ensure that we fund the State Department, put the diplomats in the lead, and work with countries, including those with whom we do not see eye to eye, on the solutions that allow us to resolve otherwise intractable problems. In Afghanistan, that's going to involve negotiating with the Taliban to make sure that there is a stable country there and it can never again be used to launch attacks on the United States or our allies. In Syria, that might involve having to work with Russia and other countries who have an interest in that country, or we can resign ourselves to a permanent troop presence in that country too. In Iraq, we've got to work with the different political factions, the Shia, the Sunni, and the Kurds as well, or we will also be fighting the successors of ISIS, just like ISIS was the successor of Al-Qaeda. All of these begin with fundamental, unresolved political problems that have to be addressed politically and diplomatically and cannot be imposed militarily. If we're willing to put that work in and make that investment in diplomacy, then I am confident that we can bring our service members back home to our communities, to this country, and not have to go to war everywhere around the world to resolve our foreign policy challenges and problems. Thanks for asking the question. Appreciate it.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to get to you.
Thank you.
Welcome to Iowa, and I guess it seems to me that over the last 30 years, since the demise of the Fairness Doctrine, the media has contributed so much to the increased polarization in our country, more than would be normal and natural in a country. And so my question to you is, would you, if elected president, consider a return to the Fairness Doctrine, or what would be your plan to address that?
Yeah. Such a good question. I mentioned at the outset how divided and polarized this country is, further exacerbated by the most polarizing and divisive president of our lifetimes. But contributed to by what happens on Twitter, what happens on cable TV programs, the way that we've kind of pitted ourselves against one another in this country and defined ourselves by partisan labels instead of seeing the fact that we are commonly Americans with a shared national priority going forward. I don't know, to be honest with you, what the answer to that is. Given all the different forums and channels and feeds through which we get information and form our opinions, I don't know that this is something that we can mandate or regulate. But I do think there's an opportunity to ensure that we are not manipulated. So what we saw happen in 2016, thanks to Russian involvement and their ability to manipulate the way that we are already beginning to feel about one another, we need to ask more and perhaps mandate more from social media companies so that what comes through our feeds can be trusted and we're not reinforcing our own biases. We need to follow the lead that Sarah just gave us of having these eyeball-to-eyeball conversations in person, knocking on people's doors, picking up the phone and calling one another. There is a growing isolation in this country and a loss of a sense of unity that is very dangerous, very inimical to our democracy. And I don't think you can make up for it through our digital and online connections. I think we have to be here and be able to see one another to make it happen. It's why we've very consciously chosen to campaign in this way and not to be simply online or on TV, but here with you in person. So I agree with you about the seriousness of the challenge. We look forward to working with you on finding out how we resolve that challenge and how we get back to, as our friend from Moms Demand Action just had a great conversation with a gun owner, having civil conversations where we respect one another and treat one another with dignity. At a minimum, I'm going to try to lead by example in this campaign in the way that I talk about and talk with my fellow Americans. So thank you for asking the question. Appreciate it. Sarah, thank you for bringing us together. To each of you for taking some time out of your Tuesday morning to welcome a stranger from far West Texas. Grateful for the experience, love the questions that you posed, and look forward to continuing the conversations with many of you. Very grateful. Thank you all very much.